Thank you very much, Eftimia, for introducing ERC and let's say bringing us all together here. Today, good morning everybody. Today I would like to present our research, but in a very small component of the entire project of SETinSTONE. And what we present today is related to our use of free and open source softwares as computer applications in the project. The outline of our talk consists of 3 items. First of all, upon the request of Eftimia, I'll briefly discuss a little bit about how we went about the application for our project SETinSTONE and what that entailed. Next, we move to what ERC and open access means, because it's a very important component that ERC promotes very much already since the moment we applied. And I also want to make the link between how we understand open access and what FOSS plays a role in that context. Then we will continue talking about the SETinSTONE projects and its computer applications. First of all, what the project does as a whole in terms of that, but then very specifically, and I will hand over then to Irini, my colleague, on a specific 2 work packages we are working on together. A lot of the images you will see are actually images from the project in different stages of it and different people, to break also down a bit of the text, of course. So, this slide shows 2 components of what we were asked to discuss as part of, let's say, an ERC proposal and an ERC project, what does it entail. So I will talk about proposal, application and the interview, and if needed and wanted, we can also discuss later, maybe during the discussion, what it means to be, or what experience we have as PIs, and what is important if you want to apply as a PI, what it entails to apply, and what you have to be careful for before, during, and after. So the ERC proposal itself has already been discussed in length by Eftimia, but I want to briefly mention the fact that it does take, if you want to do a good job, it does take about 4 months solidly preparing for it. Reading, writing, trying out, discussing with the faculty members the budget and so on. The submission process was extremely easily facilitated by the participant portal, something you can find online easily. And I suggest everybody to subscribe the moment you plan to submit, to subscribe immediately to that, because I submitted my proposal the first time 3 weeks in advance and the last time a week in advance. You can resubmit 100 times, 150 times, it doesn't matter. Each time you re-upload a new version, the old one is deleted. So this is very useful practice, and it shows in terms of time what it takes to do so. When it came to the interview preparations, you make a PowerPoint because you have to present your project for about 10 minutes. I have heard that has changed in the meantime, but my timing at the time was 10 minutes presentation and 15 minutes question time. As Eftimia already mentioned, the panel of about 18 to 20 people, so it's a solid panel, and all of them ask questions. Comes from a very wide range of disciplines. So in the entire panel, there were only 2 archaeologists. I had economic historians, I had anthropologists, I had people from a variety of different range of fields, and they also mentioned where they come from. But all the questions are totally relevant, and it makes you also think out of the box. So keep that in mind when you write your application as well. It's that part of generalization, but at the same time, not dumbing down. It needs to be accessible for other people too. So the PI experiences we talk later. So before I actually started the SETinSTONE project, I was holding Marie Curie Gerda Henkel Co-Fund Research Fellowship that gave me a wonderful opportunity to be very mobile for a period of time. So I was able to travel between different countries and set up a network of specialists that I wanted to work with in the future. And that led also to the setting up of field training schools. So together with the then director of the Finnish Institute in Athens, Jari Pakanen, who's also here in the room, we set up a series of training field schools that enabled students from Finland, the Netherlands, Leiden then, and Bordeaux-Montaigne in France University to get familiar with some of the technologies that we were planning to use for a future application ERC project. The good thing about this was that the people from Bordeaux actually also came with their own knowledge on FOSS, so free and open source software for 3D documentation. And this for me was a world opening completely. So this was absolutely wonderful. They showed us how to do it with objects. We were very successful in doing that. And then we also tried their methods and architectural features. So SETinSTONE itself, the project, came out, let's say, of that prior project, and very much also a result of collaborative work, with the main aim to assess if, big question, and how monumental building activities may have impacted on social, political, and economical structures of the Mycenaean policies in the period between 16 and 1100 BC, which is the period we are working in the Aegean, so current Greece, and how people responded to the changes of these structures. That's the overall goal. We then have three sub-questions. The first one dealing with architecture, and actually links to a big part of the project where several people work on labor cost studies in order to understand how many resources, both people but also animals, were involved in building on a monumental scale in a variety of different regions. Second part of the project deals with subsistence strategies developed by people living in the region and how they were able to sustain themselves during periods where massive building was taking place and other influences also had an impact in the region. And the third objective or question, let's say, was a more synthetic aspect, also dealing with the regions outside our specific area where no such building was taking place, because we're looking at a period of time around 1200 BC where there is the so-called collapse of the Mycenaean society, or let's say crisis, and how was that actually, how was that linked to places where building was not taking place to such an extent. So just briefly, the map showing where the core area of our research is taking place, which is the northeastern Peloponnese, the Argolid region, but we're also active in Attica, where Athens is the capital of Greece, and in the northern Peloponnese in Achaia. So the main sites in the Argolid are Mycenae, Midea, and Tiryns. And these are all the sites where we are active from an architectural perspective. So we document 3D all the architectural features in these places, as you see on the map, minus Rhodia, which has just been added to that list. This is our team. We were originally 8 people together. Some people have already finished their part of the project. Unfortunately, we also lost a member of a project. But as you can see, we have a group of architectural people, a group of landscape people, and a group of management support. Very important for those who apply. Keep that in mind. And of course, there is overlap because you're not constantly supporting or managing part of the project. There is also time for research for those people too. And this gives you a very sort of pictorial idea of what we're coming across, because we're now moving towards our part of the project. So we're looking at Mycenaean roads, which very often also coincide with modern roads. I'll come back to that in a moment. These are wine roads in the region. The landscape is extremely varied, so there are huge plains in the region, but at the same time also rather steep hills up to about 1,000 something meters. And the monuments we're looking at are truly monumental. This is the entrance. One of our team members stands in the entrance of the SETinSTONE. This is the inside of that Tholos tomb, just to give you an idea. Okay, moving into what ERC requires when you apply or when you get funding. So they require that all the publishing happens on open access. This is a fantastic idea, but it has its issues. The problems we came across from the moment of application, and again, it's important to implement that, is the cost of journals and books when you want to have it open access. So we're easily looking at several thousand per article, and for books it can go up quite a bit more. Since 2014, as we sort of try to keep up with what's happening on the open access front, we saw that several journals are now open access, but they charge publication costs. So it just keeps the same issue. So there's always a cost involved. And of course, there are the open access platforms such as academia, ResearchGate, and university repositories. But even there, they have to comply with the open access rules and regulations of journals, books, and so on. So if there is an embargo of a period, or you need to pay for it, or whatever you upload cannot be the final version, and so on. So for me, the question always set, so how open access is open access actually? There is a serious issue going on. Research needs to be reproducible in all its aspects. Analyses and experiments need to be verifiable or falsifiable. So we were thinking, at least going a step back and staying out of the publication for a moment, it is potentially also useful that we start thinking how we can make our research open access, not just the publication, but also the research, the raw data, the data we produce. And we thought that could potentially be implemented by free and open source software. So since 2013, we've been thinking and experimenting with that aspect. It started, as I mentioned, with the colleagues of Bordeaux. We used an EVA handheld 3D scanner for objects. They were familiar with that. And we then tried to do that also on certain architectural elements within a monumental structure. The problem, of course, is you look at the tool that is used for that. This is very small. We're looking at monumental structures of several 100 meters long, several meters high. You cannot scan something in with a tool like that. So we moved very quickly to the idea of using digital photography and photogrammetry, and also drone photography and photogrammetry. And the FOSS aspect sat in the processing of the images. So we started out with the photogrammetry by using MeshLab and Blender, which are free softwares that you can download, and combined with Photoscan Standard, which was very cheap at the time. It was 90 euros. So as open access as possible, or as fast as possible. The problem there was that these models that we created could not be georeferenced. So we had to move to Agisoft Photoscan Pro, which allowed that system. And since then, we've moved to the next version of Metashape. I will skip this because it's going to take a bit too much time. When we then So let's say the FOSS was not really possible within the 3D documentation of the architectural features of our project. However, when we started together with Irini working on our specific double work packages, which looks into the stone extraction points and quarries and the building sites and how they are connected with roads and infrastructure. So the Mycenaean road system and bridges networks in the Argolid, as you can see on the map. We thought maybe we can do something there with such software. So these are the typical features we come across when we walk around in the landscape. On the right, you see the M1, the highway, Mycenaean highway number 1, very well paved road, but with absolutely massive boulders indicating the edge of the terrace, because this sits in a rather steep slope. That means that water needs to run off that road to keep it usable through channels, which we could distinguish in many places along those roads, and also through these culverts and bridges that would let the water run off into the landscape below. So looking at that, we decided to collect detailed published maps. We decided to walk in the landscape based on these maps along the Mycenaean roads and see how that coincided with the modern roads. So we did both. During road walking, we recorded waypoints to verify the published features that we came across and to follow the trail as we walked along these roads. We plotted those on free downloadable maps, so it's important there that you credit where they come from. And at the same time, we also wanted to triangulate our data with comparative work with independent least cost paths. So the issue here is the visualization of what we did from 2D to 3D with the FOSS help in the process. One of the issues we came across was that the GPS data that we recorded for the waypoints was of low accuracy, but at the same time, for at least our purposes, this was good enough, as we then saw also when we plotted that on the maps. These are some of the old maps or older maps available. This one here is from the 1800s, but in very, very accurate in terms of the archaeological material. The one next to it is from 2003, from the Mycenaean Atlas project and survey, and all the dotted lines are the Mycenaean roads. Now in total, I think we walked about 80 kilometers so far, so we still have a few more to do. This was a first attempt to make the maps 3D. This is a project based in Sheffield, but it doesn't continue. And you can see the elevation of the landscape, of course, but the roads are not very accurately depicted on that. So we took it a step further. And I can go over to Irini here.
So for this part of the presentation, we would like to focus and demonstrate on the fact that it is possible to use free open source software in order to compute analysis and generate maps and calculate distances, but also to run least cost path analysis. The minimum hardware required for that purpose are two simple devices that more or less we all have access to. So that is a smartphone and a laptop, which is equipped with a GIS program. At this point, I would like to mention that this is a small compromise using a laptop versus a desktop computer, because desktops tend to be more efficient in analyzing and processing data fast. However, you cannot take it along with you on your fieldwork, which is something you can do with your laptop, and therefore you can use your laptop to analyze your data, sometimes even on the spot, if this is necessary. In terms of the GIS platform and the program that we used for our research, we used QGIS and not ArcGIS, which has been dominating the field of spatial analysis for the past 20 years or so. And the most important advantage of QGIS, apart from the fact that it's free and an open source software, is that it's entirely independent of the operating system. Contrary to ArcGIS, which operates only in the Windows platform. Additionally, QGIS has a smaller installation footprint, and this is a conclusion we came across after reading a lot of discussion on the QGIS forum. More applications that are all free and open source, and we can easily combine them and use them for our research. Include the GPS Essentials application, which is a free application you can download and use it on your smartphone in order to record your waypoints when you are on the field. And additionally, as we already mentioned, we used QGIS, but we also combined the usage of Google Maps and Google Earth Pro, which most of you are familiar with. But additionally, the Copernicus webpage and the Earth Data webpage, which only require a free registration, and then you can easily download maps or digital elevation model rasters, and you can use them in order to run your analysis. The usage of the applications that we use goes as following. So the GPS Essentials application, in order to record our waypoints on the field, which we then exported as a KML file. And this way you can import it into QGIS, but also into Google Maps and into Google Earth Pro in order to generate different types of maps, two-dimensional maps in QGIS and Google Maps, but also 3D maps in Google Earth Pro in order to get a better understanding of what the landscape looks like and what the roads we walked through, how they run through that landscape. More specifically about the QGIS program, apart from the fact that it's platform free, being a free and open source software, it means that its code can be easily tweaked, quite easily tweaked if you have the skills, if you do some reading and you have the skills to do so. You can tweak its code in order to make it fit any hardware needs and at any project size. Additionally, it can be more versatile, so it offers more potential, and it can also integrate other open source tools that you can use it to run your analysis, and you can use them as a solution. I will get into that detail a little bit further down. It is also constantly developing, since there are also a lot of discussions on the forum in order to solve some bugs and issues that occurred in older versions of QGIS, and this way it becomes a lot more intuitive and user-friendly. However, it should be kept in mind that since it's an open source approach, more skills are required for its usage, and sometimes you need the extra support and you need to reach out to the developers of the program in order to get that support in the discussion forums. Here is a short example, a brief example of what the images we generated looked like when we used the older version of QGIS, version 2.18, and this is an image generated in the latest long-term release QGIS version. So in the old version, the problem we encountered, the most annoying problem we came across, was when we tried to zoom into the image, the recorded points that were important, but also the lines that we designed. I don't know if it shows very vividly on this image.
We can't really see because you've got lights right above you.
Exactly, they have
Somebody from the conference here.
Yeah,
It's okay. I just want to indicate that the lines have shifted from the actual path that we walked. However, this is not the case in the latest version, and this is very helpful in producing very nice and sharp images. I can come back to this slide if it is resolved. Now, this is in this slide.
Yeah.
Okay, better. Thank you.
So everything is off.
Yeah, I see. I believe now you can clearly see how the lines have shifted from the actual paths that we walked. That was the point I was trying to make. And this is not the case in the latest version. Very nicely and easily drawn. In this slide, we demonstrate an example of how easy it is to combine maps that are downloaded from other websites. So the Copernicus webpage in this case has been very helpful because we downloaded the Korean land cover map, which shows the usage, the current usage of the land in the Argolid. And then we used that as a base map, and we projected on top an overview of all the routes that we walked together with Anne. And you can clearly see that today, all these routes run across cultivated land, olive groves, vineyards, and so on. This is a brief summary of the advantages of QGIS versus ArcGIS. We would just like to emphasize on the fact that QGIS comes entirely for free. It is compatible with all operating systems, and additionally, it offers very sharp images if you want to use Google Maps as a base map. With ArcGIS, if you stick to the basic offered package of Esri, the base map is of quite low resolution, and from what I've been reading so far is that if you want to use Google Maps, some extra charges are applied in that case. So this is an example of how the images look in QGIS versus ArcGIS. In this case, we are showing the preliminary results of a least cost path analysis, and in this case, least cost path analysis was also computed using ArcGIS. You can see some differences between the paths that are generated, which are mainly due to different usage of algorithms. And as a last example, we would like to point out that in the previous version of QGIS, there is an integrated GIS platform called GRASS that you can use its tools, the R tools, in order to compute least cost path analysis. The R tools are very reliable and quite effective in doing least cost path analysis. However, they take a little bit of more time. In the latest version of QGIS, there is a plugin, a least cost path plugin that helps you generate least cost paths in 3 very simple steps. However, I'm not sure that it's quite as reliable as the R tools that you can still use in the latest version of QGIS, because the latter, so the R tools, take into account more parameters, and therefore it produces more reliable results. So to conclude, so far for this part of the research, it has been absolutely possible to use FOSS to combine and use different free open source software in order to do our research.
And that actually summarizes also the overall presentation. So open access, of course, in publications is a requirement, and we follow that in every respect. But we believe that also we have an option of using FOSS in making data open access as well. And it's actually the ERC project that prompted us in such thinking, because there was the possibility and the space to do so. Of course, we have to take into account that while it's initially more time consuming, the results are actually very comparable between ArcGIS and QGIS as far as we can see for the time being. But if you want to take all cost factors into account, it takes a bit of time to get familiar with QGIS. It's far less common to have courses in QGIS, at least from what we see in our environments. The resolution in the two images or the two sets of images we make are very similar, so there is no reason to say one over the other is better. And what we do find out of this research, and that sort of complies with the open access, is the fact that once we are done with all our research, we can make our data available so that people can upload the data onto their mobile phones and decide to go on heritage walks if necessary and if wanted. So we'll look into the possibilities of setting that up in the future. So thank you very much.